Well, hello, this is Deborah Johnson with you today. And this podcast is all about helping you at mid career, halftime of life, create your best years ahead because there's so much to look forward to for men and women. But sometimes things get in the way, like life has a way of leading us down paths that we really never expected. And sometimes through joy, but often through deep loss. And an unexpected event can open the doors, actually, for purpose, not only in helping others, but also shaping our own journey in ways that we never imagined. And this was the case for Michelle Swanson, who, after losing her husband to colorectal cancer, well, she found herself committed to raising awareness and ensuring that nobody has to face a diagnosis alone. And so today we are diving into the lessons and the discoveries that come through grief, exploring how we can gain perspective, find purpose, and maybe even better prepare for the unexpected moments that inevitably shape our lives. So stay tuned. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media and HalftimeSuccess.com, offering resources and insights for those at mid-career or the halftime of life. Explore our diverse categories, including courses, coaching, health, music, software, and travel. We're here to help you make this stage of life your best ever. So get our new articles, downloads, and podcasts by signing up for weekly updates at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Well, I'm so happy to introduce Michelle to our audience today. Michelle, thank you for being here. It's wonderful to have you. And boy, we have a quite the topic today that many of us don't really think about too much. And we don't maybe not want to think about too much of, discovery through grief. Okay. That, but you have learned amazing things and have such a story to share, and how that has really fueled your life and business at this point. And I'm looking forward to you sharing this and some of the wisdom that you've gained. So thanks for being with us. And I like my guests to share a little bit of their own background, and kind of, I don't give you introduce you with a huge bio. I've been a part of that,
Okay.
having to wait on this wings of stage while someone reads this huge long whatever, and you're sure everybody's asleep by then. So, but why don't you introduce to our audience kind of a bit of your background, what you're doing now, but kind of where you came to your journey now.
Sure. No, thank you so much, Deborah. So my name's Michelle Swanson. Who am I? My background. I lost my husband 8 years ago to cancer and became a widow at 44. And while it doesn't define me, it has had a big impact on who this iteration of Michelle is today. I've been in the corporate training world for 20 plus years. I work for a large construction management firm, and I've learned so much in that industry, which actually even has had an impact on my personal life as well. I met my husband at the company I work for. I am very passionate about mental health and wellness and listening to your body. And by becoming a widow at 44, that catapulted me kind of into then learning more about colon cancer and pre-screening, the importance of listening to your body. I love working with kids as well. In my prior life, I worked at a daycare center in my teens and in college. And then after losing my husband, I got involved with an organization called Experience Camps. It's a 1-week grief camp for children. Started out as a volunteer and moved into more of a leadership role as an associate director and program director for the girls' camp in Georgia. And I've recently am involved in the girls' Georgia location as more of a operations support, still a volunteer. And the organization has become near and dear to my heart. working with the children and creating advocacy and awareness for colon cancer. So that's a little bit of who I am.
Yes. It's a mouthful. So just a large background, but especially you were so young, facing the loss of a spouse. And I know there's some things that you learned. We're going to share those things today and how we can
Yeah,
better prepare ourselves. I'm in a little bit different stage of my life, but a lot of people are at my stage, or they may be at your stage as well. You have unexpected things happen. And how do you prepare for those? So, um, what was kind of an unexpected challenge that you faced with your grief journey? Whether it's emotional, the financial, the logistical, what was that like?
I would have to say the emotional part of it. Um, I think about how I showed up as a mother, as a sister, as a friend, as myself. Shortly thereafter, losing my husband, and then 7, 8 months, a year, becoming a widow. It really impacted who I was. The word incorrigible comes to mind. My sister was like, "You were just in this state," and I didn't see it. I didn't see the state that I was in because I didn't know how to deal with this upheaval that I had been thrown into of becoming a widow at 44. My husband and I had just gotten married 3 weeks prior to his diagnosis, and
Oh my God.
I just wasn't expecting all of this. And I think back to the environment, how I was brought up and dealing, people of our age, you don't talk about feelings and emotions, it's show up and just do what you got to do. And I wasn't always addressing things, and the emotional side of it really took a toll on me. There was highs and lows, and it took a lot of different things to help get me to the stage that I'm at today. I also found that I was wanting to do everything and anything to heal. I was running, over committing, over involving, and then at some point having to say, "Wait a minute, like I got to stop running
Hmm.
because I got to
Wow.
deal with the feelings."
Yeah, because when you stop, the feelings pile on, I would expect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
for sure.
there's some fear in that, there's
It's uncomfortable. It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
uncomfortable. It's scary. You're like, ugh, I don't want to deal with this.
yeah.
I like to I
Mm,
kind of view it as the muck of discomfort. You really gotta
mm.
sit in the mud, and you know, mud baths are good for you. They're not bad for you, right? Like you think of the healing nature of that aspect,
Hmm.
and um getting comfortable with the ick
I really like
was
that,
hard.
that illustration of the mud baths because we always think of spas, okay,
Well, exactly.
it's like, are you kidding? You know? And, but wow. Yeah, I mean, that's where, the healing of bodies, of your, yeah, everything, with that. So that's a really good illustration with what
Thank
can
you.
happen. But, and people run away from different things in their lives. I mean, this is
Hmm.
real of just losing a spouse like that. And my husband and I have been married a lot, many more years, but it's hard to think about not having each other, and I watch others that go through the same thing. It's a tough thing, and, and you were so young, so that is very
Yeah.
how old were your kids at that point? Or your,
My sons were 20 when he passed. My husband was their stepfather. So
okay,
he was in their lives for about 11 years.
okay.
But he was a father figure to them.
Yeah, great.
And they were sophomores in college
Wow,
or I have twins. They were
mhm,
sophomores in college when he passed.
wow.
I was, it was
And something we didn't talk about, how did they deal with it?
they're still dealing with it.
Really? Mm.
I one of the things that comes to mind is as much as I missed him for me, I miss him for them
Oh, yeah.
tenfold.
Mm.
You know, their father, my ex-husband, he's still in the picture, but having that other male figure is so important
Mm.
to our young men.
Yeah.
When you think about what the care and feeding is that they need. And Bill really, taught them so much,
Yeah.
and he loved them so much. So
Mm.
I,
Mm.
that even was part of the grief, the loss of their stepfather
Mm.
for my sons, and like then what they were going through. Um, and that's, what I was grieving without recognizing it at the time. That's what I was grieving. That family, that community. They've they've each dealt with it in their own way,
Mhm.
but boys talking about death is not a big thing. They were both in
Mm.
college,
Mhm.
or at the time, the both schools gave them some leverage and flexibility, but one was a smaller state school, and one's a larger school. So the care and feeding that they got was very different.
Mhm.
Um, but it's they
Mm.
don't like to talk about it,
Yeah.
and and all of that. I mean, there are resources out there, but it's
Yeah.
definitely
Mm.
a struggle to get them
Yeah.
to do them.
Mm. Yeah, especially with boys.
So
I mean, we have 3 sons, and, they don't always talk about stuff. It takes it's a little different with men and women, no matter if people
correct.
wanna put them together or not, there's differences. Definitely,
Yes, yes,
definitely.
yes,
And
definitely.
having twins too. Yeah, and boys need that male figure in their life. They need a dad. They need, whether it's a stepdad or whatever. They their job, I watch, and I'm so grateful. I still have my husband, and we have the 3 sons. I tell you, there's been times that we have talked about, Greg and I together have talked about, well, at least if the boys will talk to one of us, it'll be okay.
Hmm.
Growing up, you just need that. And I tell you now, it's like they need their dad more than ever. They're
Hmm.
dealing with raising kids,
Yeah.
spouses. There's so much. And so there is, that would be something I would really miss too, of just being able to have that extra support. And they can get a lot of that from a mom. They can, but there's just a difference in men and how the
Hmm.
energy and, the athletic energy. Also, my husband's the athlete. I'm not. So there's just
Hmm.
the difference there with all of that. So, and that's probably some of those ripple effects. Do you have other ripple effects that happened in other parts of your life, with all of this? And then how did that, affect you, and how did you navigate that?
Yeah. Thank you. Those are that definitely there are a handful of them. I think friendships have changed, and what um you have your couple friends that you do so much with, and then there comes a point where it's not as comfortable maybe being around a couple friends. Like in the beginning it was okay, and then things change. I mean, you change going through widowhood. Even what's important to you, what you value, what
Mm.
you may have um spent a lot of time wanting to invest in beforehand of uh, I don't know, like stuff like extra things, like not
Mhm.
gosh, what am I looking for? Spending money on frivolous stuff. And then it's like, wait a minute, no, I'd rather have that time for experiences, what you value,
Oh,
et
that's good.
cetera. Who you're spending time with, what you're doing, what you're investing your time in, and not financially, emotionally.
Mhm.
Was running, always on the go. I wanted to go here. I wanted to go there. I wanted to be involved in this. I wanted to be involved in that. And then it was, wait a minute, like I just need to stop. And then health wise, I wasn't taking care of my health properly
Mm.
after my husband passed. I ignored things. I'm not 100% great at it today. I'm not even like 60% great at it, but like it's really listening to your body, taking care of yourself, recognizing that, when you go through this life-changing moment, it catapults you into this next phase where then you have to stop and go, whoa, okay, wait a minute. What am I doing? What do I want to do the rest of my life? What do I want to invest my time in? What do I want my future to look like?
Yeah.
Um, for me also, it was always, um, thinking about, okay, now I was going to have this future with Bill, and then it changed. And I wasn't just running from day to day. It was, okay, where do I want to be in 5 years, in 10 years? What do I want to get to? And I didn't always think that way before, just the ripple effects are endless. You also end up making new friendships and new connections, and then being grateful for maybe not having. It's a weird, like, the place to be in, where you're thankful and appreciative and grateful that you're creating these moments and new memories, and then you may get caught up in it, going, "Whoa, had he not passed, I wouldn't be here. What, am I supposed to be happy?" But yes, you are, right? Like, that's the ripple effect of being thankful and appreciative for all of these new, I like to call them stamp your soul moments, when it's just like that, like, hits you here, and whether it's good or bad, right? Like, it's just like, wow, this was so awesome.
Yeah.
I want to have more of these. And that appreciation. And it's so simple. Like, you think of all those phrases, and what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, time heals all wounds, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, I don't want to hear that one more time. Yet at some point it's like, oh, wait a minute, that kind of is true. I am getting better. I'm not, I don't feel as yucky as I did then.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of support groups and, churches, there's, widows groups, and I know there's people that just really, that's really, really helped them, being able to have other people and to talk about it, and to people at different times of their journey. And then developing other deep friends too. You have something in common, that's unique,
Yeah.
for that. So yeah, but I like your emphasis also on being grateful, thankful. That's important for any of us at any stage of life, because things just can happen so fast, so fast. Life is fragile in many ways. So, living each day like that, with that, it opens up your mind, your whole attitude. There, I would see that as a really, really important part of this journey, and giving yourself space too. For that, I can imagine it just. You want everything you want that big Band-Aid on it and just go, okay, I don't want to feel that anymore, or whatever, that would be
Correct.
feel like you wanted to do. So, well, how did, maybe even some of your professional background, really influence, the way that you responded? Because you had been working at the same place for, 20 years. You've had this corporate experience and training and all of that. So, did this help, or did this hinder, or was it great to have a place to go, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's a mixture of, I like, one of my other many isms is like ratatouille, or jambalaya. Like, it's a mixture of everything. It was a blessing, and then there were struggles because, being in a caring community for my job, my company, they really, a lot of care and feeding. So thankful and appreciative of that, and the space that I needed to heal and take time off of work. I know that that's not the case for everybody.
Yes.
And then also, working with a handful of consultants in corporate training. Some are psychologists, therapists, right? You're talking about leadership skills, et cetera. So it's that human side of of human development, and having that, on one hand, having that background and thinking like, okay, well, I've been, through trainings on empathy and leadership and how to be around people and things that you're supposed to be aware of and self-awareness training. I can't tell you how many self-awareness training classes I sat in. Yet, fast forward a year or so into my husband's passing, I wasn't fully self-aware. Like I thought I was, but I wasn't because I was grieving, but I was running and I wasn't dealing with my grief.
Wow.
And I, went back into therapy and I probably went back into therapy about 9 months after my husband passed and met my therapist through church. And she was amazing and was with her for a couple of years. And then I had moved and, I still am in therapy. For me, it works. It's helpful. It's really, I've had to deal with my feelings and my emotions, so, going to your question about, working in my career and how it was it a positive or a negative? And it's not that it was a negative. I just, had this mindset and thought, well, I'm okay because I have all this awareness. But and really, I didn't. I went through trauma. I went through a major life event and wasn't really prepared. It's interesting. I think about a year ago, sometime last year, actually, I was thinking, wow, if I had the skills at 52, if I had the skills at 44 that I have today at 52, how my life might be different. Yet at the same time, I had to go through what I had to go through to get to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
And so then that's okay. And accepting that and saying, well, okay, yeah, those, mayor of Sucktown, I didn't like it, still don't at times, but it's then accepting that and saying, okay, I had to get through that. And that's, made me who I am today. So then hopefully I'm showing up, I'm treating myself better. I'm showing up, being kinder to others, family, sisters, like all of that, just having that different mindset.
Right.
It's a struggle. Yeah.
And as I look back, because I'm, in the middle of, as we record this, writing another book, but I kind of look back and I'm giving, some advice and certain technical things. But I don't discount all of the frustration I've gone through because it helps me to help others. And I mean, there's a lot that you go through when you're producing, musicals and albums and books and, all of these things. And then technically, with every little doohickey that's different that you have to plug in. So there's, some of that we all, just those little minor things, nothing like the grief that you've gone through. But what you are doing is part of that journey helps you, my point to all of this, helps you to be able to help others because you understand, you've gone down to the depth of understanding what it feels like, some of the steps and how to pull out of some of that and to be able to communicate. And good for you that you're still, working with a therapy. If you need that, you just, that's a wonderful thing. And people can get this from different areas. They may go to a professional therapist. They may have friends. They may have groups that help. These are like, there's almost like a mastermind group or something, something like that. But it would be very similar to that. So I think that's a wonderful thing. And you had mentioned also a little something about insurance or finances and all of that going through when we had spoken. And what sort of things can any of us prepare for, or can we even prepare for that, especially as women? There's men and women that listen to this, but especially as women, but this could affect men as well.
Well, and I appreciate you asking me this because, you touched on it a little bit. Like, you don't just have to go through the loss of a spouse to deal with grief, right? And there's loss is loss. It's not a one size fits all, and we're all going to go through these various stages. So it's important for me to, to share that message. For the financial part too, the conversations, things that I've had around the financial part of it, like these conversations need to be had right after you get married or when you're even talking about getting married. I look at it. You don't wait we do. Like, we are programmed to wait until that person gets sick, to wait until, get life insurance, but you don't have to talk about it till later, till later, till later.
Yeah.
And then you don't get the life insurance, and then you don't talk about it when that person gets sick, and then that something happens and they're gone. At the end of the day, what do we know? We're going to be born and we're going to die. Like,
Yes, you're
that's
right.
what happens, right? And it's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I mean, it's a whole other piece of things that I talk about too, is the beauty in death. That's separate right now. And the financial part is, I was very fortunate that my husband, I was in tune to and aware of our finances. I think also, being married first, divorced, single mom, it was important for me to have that aware. Control is also one of my pluses and, minuses. Like, I like to be in control. I'm the oldest of four, so it's definitely something I've had to learn to manage. But thank God we had life insurance, and I was aware of the bills, and my name was on certain things. But when you don't take the time to do that, and then you're waiting till the end, like, sometimes it's too late, because then you're in this emotional state, you're on this pendulum, and you're balancing all these feelings. And if you're not in touch with your feelings, you're making rash, impulsive decisions, or you're not making decisions. So, that's something that I had to deal with, my emotions and feelings of the irregularity of all of them, post. I mean, it's part of the blanket statement there. But it's so important, to get that life insurance.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can afford it, because you can't afford not to have it.
I love that.
Yes. And to sit down with your spouse and talk about, okay, what do we want future state to be? Have that living will. Making sure you're both on all of the bills, or that if the electric utility bills are in your husband's name, or your wife's name, or your partner's name, what have you, making sure you're at least on there as a person that can talk to the company for when that time comes, because things to deal with probate, and it's such a headache, and it's another task to this long list of things, this checklist of things that you have to follow up with. Wow. That can be that's overwhelming when you're already in this state of grief.
That is such good advice. We have, my name is on a lot of our, documents and our, everything that we have. So, but, it's very, very important that we have that communication back and forth. And it's a good reminder for me, because it's like, okay, I probably need to go back and make sure I know all of those areas. I have all the passwords now on my last passport.
Yeah.
A lot of areas that need to be covered, from your, utilities. You've got house. Some of this is cash. Okay, so how are you paying the gardeners? How are you paying all of these? There's a lot of areas, that we deal with in life, and so those are the things you just don't want to just deal with. It's busy too. You're busy, so you're working, you're doing all of this other stuff, and you're just kind of busy. So you just put it off and put it off and put it off. And at least you had a little bit of a warning, if he had that diagnosis, but you're never totally ready.
We didn't, we didn't, it's one of my memories is when he had passed, came home from the hospital, and I sat down at my desk and realized, nope, none of the bills had been paid for a couple of weeks, right? Like, cause he had been, on life support. He was intubated, and it was the beginning of the new year, and just had let things go. And I thought, oh my God, I just lost this big salary. He made more money than I did. And this, the boys were in college, and all of a sudden this salary's gone. And now, yes, I knew we had life insurance, but okay, I got to make sure I pay these bills. And what do I need to pay? I want to pay this off. I want to pay that off. And, I made some rash decisions, and you get overwhelmed with all these administrative tasks, and you feel like you have to do them all right away. Or then maybe you don't, you push some things off, you ignore it. And then all of a sudden 6 months goes by, a year goes by, and you never take care of it. And
Yeah.
it's then giving yourself the space to stop running and pause, and it's okay. And to raise your hand and ask for help.
Yeah.
That was something else that I've struggled with, is saying, I can't, for me, it was always, okay, I got myself into this situation. I'm going to figure out how to get myself out. And I kind of carried that same mindset over, but asking for help, like, sit down, will you help me go through all of this, and figuring out what to pay, what not to pay, when to pay, how much, just all of that. But I recognize too, like I said, we had life insurance. Not everybody has that. And then what happens? Can you handle the house? You have to sell the car. What do you have to get rid of? What don't you, all of that. It's overwhelming.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And to make sure, I mean, we're at a point where we really need to update our trust. And there's all of these little things that you have that you end up putting off. And it's such a good reminder. It's a good reminder for me. I always tell my guests, I learn a lot through a lot of my podcast interviews, because it's things that, I'm taking care of in my life, in our life. Our kids are, now they're launched, which is nice, but there's a lot going on still. And we are gradually, every year that goes by, we're all on the same train, right? One of us is probably going to go before the other. My parents, my mom would always say, oh, I want to go at the same time as your dad, which they didn't. But they were a year apart when they, left us. But it was still, you're never totally prepared of just, who's left behind is never, there's a lot to deal with. My sisters and I, even 5 years later, are still dealing with some of these little details. There's details when that happens. And when we think of our lives, of what, we're leaving. So that's great advice to take care of business, at least to educate yourself. I'm so happy that you were on, a lot of the bills, the documents. Very, very helpful. Very, very smart to do. And don't let ego get in the way. Push that aside. Say, what's going to happen? And the possibilities of women living longer than men is very real. So that's the case many, many times. Doesn't always happen that way, but that's very much a statistical, fact. So we do need to be prepared for the women that are listening to this. We do need to be prepared. So what is maybe one of the most meaningful ways that you have chosen to honor, the legacy that your husband was here, or what have you done in that way? I know you work with kids, or is that one of the things?
It's my current statement to that is, in our wedding vows, Bill had said, and I now get to solve the world's problems with you. And it wasn't until, a couple years ago that I was reading our vows, and I thought, okay. And now, like, when I think about how I show up, I'm honoring his vows. By having this conversation with you today, right? His death catapulted me into this life that I wasn't expecting. It led me to become the woman that I am today. And so I'm educating people as they're listening to this. You're going to make mistakes. We're human. I've made plenty of mistakes, but just hopefully one person listening to this says, oh, wow, I haven't listened to my body. I need to get screening for whatever.
Yes.
I need to get my finances taken care of. I don't know what my will is. I mean, you know what? We've been putting off getting life insurance. Let me get that. We can afford, let me at least make the phone call and find out how much it's going to cost.
Yes.
Let me make sure I get my name on that one bill, or I get my spouse's name or my partner's name on that one bill. Whatever that one thing is, that to me is how I'm now honoring Bill by, helping, solve the world's problems. And I know that I can't. That was it's like he really knew me way more than I knew myself, and we would fight about that, by the way. And I was like, "You don't know me," I was like, "Yeah, I do." I'm like, "No, you don't." But
That's funny.
looking back, I'm like, "Oh, I guess he kind of did know me."
Yeah, that's funny.
So I'd like to think like that's how I'm honoring him, and that we didn't talk about what if, we didn't talk about when,
Mm.
we didn't talk about. And I even default and say, what if? We didn't talk about, Bill, what do you want to do? Like, what are your wishes for? What are your dreams for the boys, for myself? What are your dreams, when you pass that you want me to fulfill? Like, what is it? We didn't have that conversation. So I'm going off of what I thought, and maybe at times I didn't make the right decisions,
Mm.
post his passing, and
Mm.
just having to get to be okay with that, saying, okay, well, maybe that wasn't the smartest choice,
Mm.
but you did it. Now let's figure out like what the next thing is, and all of that. So
It's
yeah, giving
interesting when you
yourself
talk
grace.
about, yeah, you talk about, some of those questions. And I always think about, table topics, how there's a little, if you've not familiar with those, you can buy those on Amazon, anywhere. But, little
Hmm.
box of just cards, and I'm
Yep.
sure there's, different areas. But sometimes, those show up. I've started adding those into, after dinner talks or after coffee,
Hmm.
and I'll put a couple in there, and you start talking about a few of these things. They're not targeted toward the topic today, but there's things come up. What are, some of
Hmm.
your dreams, and what do you want to do? How would you donate your time if you were, going and donating it at some point? So, those are the type of questions, and being able to explore those a little bit. And sometimes with some of those, it's like, oh, I haven't like thought about that in a long time. But it's good.
Yeah,
It's good to
exactly.
bring some of those things up, and with that communication, I think, especially with a spouse. And if you have a spouse to, talk to about that when you can, when you're
Hmm.
when your mind start going, hopefully that will never be the case in our situation, but you never know. You just never know. So,
Hmm.
but for those who are just maybe beginning, they're starting to navigate loss. I have a couple friends that they've had to deal with dementia, Alzheimer. All
Hmm.
of a sudden, that's starting to creep into a relationship, which is very prevalent and real. So when you start to just navigate losing somebody, you've already shared some of the advice, especially financial, and especially, that communication, but that you wish maybe somebody told you. Is there anything else that would help us? And especially if we start gradually losing a spouse or the family member, we don't know.
You know, ask for help. It's
Mm.
so we feel like we have to do it all by ourselves,
Mhm.
and there really are communities out there,
Mm.
and it's not just in churches, and we have
Mhm.
you have the internet
Mhm.
at your hands today that wasn't, and even where it is today from where it was 8 years ago.
Mhm.
Um, yes, there's a ton of Facebook pages and Instagram, what have you. And I recognize that everybody's family, friendship situation is different.
Right.
Um, and people, aren't comfortable asking for help. Yet it is out there. I mean, honestly, even AI, like
Mhm.
there are resources out there. Just
Mm.
raising your hand and saying, I need help, and even articulating the fears that are going on inside you. That was a huge something even hard for me to do, to say, I feel sad. I feel lonely.
Mhm.
I have days when I'm very uncomfortable. Um, my anxiety's hell. My feelings aren't in check. And I share, it's easier for me to have this dialogue with you
Mhm.
because I don't really know, you're not a friend of 40 years,
No.
like we're having this dialogue. We don't have this history.
Mhm.
For me
Yeah.
to share with one of my best friends,
Mm.
just this was really, really hard for me, and it was very emotional, and it took a long time to get over that hurdle. It's
Wow.
and then once I don't like, and that's just my personal thing. Like once I shared how scared I am, how my fears,
Yeah.
it actually was because I got it out of my head and I said it out loud to somebody who
Mhm.
really does care about me. It was like, oh, okay, that's a little bit better.
Mm.
And then they're checking in on you,
Yeah.
you know.
Mm.
It's just getting over the saying it out loud, articulating it to somebody close to you is
Yeah.
that was just voicing your feelings,
Mhm.
the fear that you have going on inside you, so it
Mhm.
gets out of your head.
Mm.
That I found very, very impactful, if
Mm.
you will.
Yeah, because we don't want to be a burden to others and we don't want to be, just downer all the time and, like that. But you really do need to to share.
Yeah, and then your ego. I think you even
Yeah.
mentioned the word ego
Yeah.
before. Like,
Yeah.
I go, I can handle this. I knew this was coming. I
Mhm.
have this job. I have this
Mhm.
career. I've done this. I've done that. Or you need a community. You need help.
Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
We're not made to do all this by ourselves.
Yeah, and you're not gonna be this huge big burden. Sometimes people don't know how to act around you. So if you're able to
Correct.
at least share, and yeah, I'm struggling, but I still want to be your friend. And that, yes, some of that would be, helpful. Depends on the relationship.
Correct. And I think, for others listening, as you've got friends that are going through loss or, what have you, you may be pulling away from things. And then if you see that person pulling away and not showing up, don't take it so personally.
Yeah,
there's a bigger thing going on there with them,
right.
and they don't know how to share what they're feeling. They
Yeah.
don't feel
Yeah.
comfortable sharing it,
Mhm.
but like they're retreating, and there's a reason that they're retreating and isolating, and
Mhm.
you get like stuck in this, in this paradox.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
it like I like to think that while grief, it breaks you. It
Yeah.
really does break you down, but then it builds you up. Like you look at it as building blocks
Mhm.
as you're
Mhm.
coming. You know, we're forever learning.
Yes.
Right? And so you're building this new version of yourself,
Right.
um,
Building a
and
new
getting comfortable
foundation.
with it.
Yeah, I mean, you've
Yeah,
got a foundation, but you're building a different house on it. Yeah, definitely. So,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Wow,
Yeah.
coming from construction, that's a great illustration there. I like that. So, um, well, I'd like you to leave everyone with, you've already left us pretty much with one basic, takeaway here. I think that's very, very important in getting help. And you have such wise words here, but I want to be able to,
Thank
if
you.
if you are open to have people contacting you, and to giving any sort of information, if you have any other information out about this or about your messaging, you can give that to, and I'll have all of those, any sort of links in the show notes. With
Hmm.
this, sometimes I write an article as well. I'm not sure if there'll be an article about this, but make sure, if you're listening to this, that you're getting all our newsletters, because you will get this podcast. You're going to get all of the information around it too. So, anything else that you want to say, and then just give a contact for our audience.
Yeah, so I definitely, I'm happy to be a resource. I'll, share my email address, and and my phone number. You can reach out to me. Do you want me to share the phone number
Why don't you
right now?
your the email that you would have, or if you have, I know you've got a Substack or you've got something, some sort of articles and things going with that. So why don't you share that? But it will be in the show notes. I just have you share it just if people are just listening, so they can go, oh yeah,
Okay.
okay, yeah.
Okay. Well, right now it's just ML Swanson 22 at gmail.com. Is my email address. And then you can find me under Michelle Swanson on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And, just definitely please reach out. I'm just getting started on this new iteration of talking about my discovery through grief and getting the message out there. You know, um, there's magical moments everywhere we go, and
Yes.
really just looking to see what that stamp your soul moment is. And when you get that, for me, like Bill stamped my soul. Like I could hear him.
Mm.
There'll be a situation and I know exactly what he was going to say. And I think like, how lucky am I to have known somebody that did that in such a way. And I hope that, I can pay that forward and
Yes.
create stamp your soul moments for somebody. And when you have that moment that just impacts you, like, wow, this was amazing. This was awesome. This took my breath away. I'm going to remember this. Remember that, and
Mm.
you're going to pull from it.
Yes.
Like whatever situation you're going to be in, 5, 10, 3 years down the road, 6 months down the road, you're going to go, oh, wow, like I remember that really good feeling or that moment when I felt connected. I felt safe. I was with people that made me feel supported. I
Right.
felt really strong, empowered, and it's going to help you through that next moment.
Yes.
And like that, just remembering that I think is so important and incredibly invaluable.
Such a good reminder. Wonderful reminder. So,
Thank you.
well, thank you for all of the listeners who've hung on all the way through this. It was a very positive interview, too, with positive steps that we can make, and how you can come out on the other end with building a new foundation, stronger, and you've got so much to give. And you are at the
Thank you.
great stage of life when those are listening. If you're in your 40s, you're in your 50s, and you're thinking about your next stages of life, you never know. The unexpected can happen. But these are the best years
Hmm.
ahead. And you've got experience, you've got resources, you've got all of the skills, and so there's so much ahead. So thank you, Michelle, so much for sharing your
Oh, you're so
story.
welcome. Thank
It's
you,
just the
Deborah.
honesty. I think that's very, very important for people to hear that. It's very impactful. And so your message is very needed. And I mean, we all need to hear it. And with some of your wise advice today. So thank you all for joining us very much. I am
Thank
here
you
at
so much.
least. Yeah, I am here at least once a week, if not a couple times sometimes with bonuses. But thank you for joining us. And I look forward, Deborah Johnson, to seeing you again next time. So bye-bye for now. This podcast is brought to you by DJ Works Media and HalftimeSuccess.com, offering resources and insights for those at mid-career or the halftime of life. Explore our diverse categories, including courses, coaching, health, music, software, and travel. We're here to help you make this stage of life your best ever. So get our new articles, downloads, and podcasts by signing up for weekly updates at goalsforyourlife.com/newsletter.